Welcome back to the Chronicles of the King podcast, where we take a deep dive into the life and legacy of Elvis Presley. I'm Megan.
And I'm Tessa, and we are two 20-something Elvis fans dedicated to keeping his legacy alive with a research-based approach.
Whether you're a die-hard Elvis fan or simply curious about a man who changed the course of music and culture, you're in the right place.
We are here to unpack the myths, explore the music, and get to the heart of Elvis's enduring impact.
Every other week, we'll bring you research, untold stories, and fresh perspectives on Elvis's journey. From his humble beginnings to his legendary performances, we're here to shed light on it all.
So settle in for a podcast made with a lot of TLC for the man himself, one story at a time. Hey guys, welcome back. We took a little bit of a break, so I know it's been a while since you've heard from us. We were both doing things with our families over Christmas and New Year, and then for the first week of January, we were in Memphis for Elvis's 90th birthday. So we will be doing an episode debriefing on our experience at the 90th, which was amazing. We had such a wonderful time. It was so exciting to meet people and talk about our podcast, talk about ourselves, talk about Elvis. It was awesome. So
all the people understood us.
Everyone understood us.
Yes,
definitely. And so we're just trying to get a little bit back in the swing of things with the new year, back into our podcast schedule. So today we're going to be talking about 4 of Elvis's movies from around 62, 63. So we're going to be doing Follow That Dream, Kid Galahad, Girls, 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 and It Happened at the World's Fair. Now, before this, I had only seen It Happened at the World's Fair. And so I've seen them all since August now, but I hadn't seen most of them. Maybe I saw Girls, 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 but I don't remember.
We'll get to that part. You're the guilty pleasure song for you.
Oh, my fave. So we're just going to talk a little bit about those movies and the behind the scenes, stuff like that. So let's get right into it.
All right.
Follow That Dream came out April 11th, 1962. It was directed by Gordon Douglas and distributed by the Mirish Company, which then also did Kid Galahad. It was a 2-movie special, I guess. And it is based on the novel Pioneer Go Home by Richard Powell, which was published in 1959. Our cast includes, surprise, Elvis, Arthur O'Connell, Anne Helm, and Joanne Moore.
Right, and then our logline, which is just a little description of the film's plot, is a family of squatters takes on a gambling chieftain and corrupt social worker. Interesting plot, a little bit different than what Elvis is used to. And as for, we're going to give you a little bit of plot rundown, so if you've never seen the movie, a little bit of spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. So the movie follows Toby Quipmer, which is Elvis's character. Am I saying that right this time?
Quimper.
Thank you. Tessa's here to police me on my pronunciation. So thank you. So his character is a cheerful and naive dude from a family of vagabonds. Vagabonds?
Yeah.
Whoa, where'd that word come from?
It's like they're, drifters.
Squatters.
Yeah, squatters. I mean, that's quite a lot. They're all pretty much unsophisticated and dumb is kind of the vibe there. And definitely. Toby has a large, colorful, and unconventional family, shall we say. That's kind of led by the dad.
Yep.
And his name is Pop Quimper. There are some adopted children, including this babysitter, Holly. I said, I don't even know, it's giving Beverly Hillbillies. And they live off the land and refuse government assistance. So it's kind of like...
It's a squatter story, basically.
I guess, yeah.
Yeah. So the Quimpers' journey begins as they head down to a Florida highway, but find themselves stranded when their car runs out of gas near an unfinished road near the coast. So also, if you haven't seen the filming locations, there's plenty of it out there. Go take a look. So instead of leaving because they are #self-reliant, and I don't know, grifters is what Tessa is describing them as, they decide to homestead the land. So they're just, again, they're squatters. They're taking it over. They'd be like, we got this. I feel like in a way they just colonize it. Maybe, I don't know. What's the word?
Yeah.
They established this weird kind of community, again, kind of the colonizing part of it. Weird. I don't know. There's a casino. Also, we don't know why there's a casino in this
I don't know.
scenario.
I don't
And
really know.
there are also like hitmen and lots of drama.
Right. There's just like I feel like a lot of plot points. So I don't know. So then the local officials and a land developer try and remove the family, and the evil guy in the story is a land developer who tries to get Toby to hook up with the social worker girl, but he's like, no, whatever. And then she calls Child Protective Services to try and take the kids away from this family. And then there are run-ins with social workers, courtroom battles, and Toby has a little awkward but sweet romance with Anne Helm and the babysitter Holly, who is also kind of his adopted sister, kind of.
We don't ask questions.
I don't know. Anyway.
Once we get to kissing cousins, you don't ask questions. I'm just saying.
And guess what? Toby has a talent. Tell us what it is.
I feel like if you didn't guess singing, you need to go read some more Elvis books or something. I don't
know. Yeah. So Toby has a talent for singing, wins over everybody.
Classic. And we got some main themes for this movie. So one we noticed was individualism, independence. Again, they're giving self-reliance. They're cultivating the land themselves. They don't need any help. Personal freedom, they don't tend to tread on, like the don't tread on me vibes, if that makes sense.
That was kind of what it was giving to me anyway. That's just the vibe.
To Tessa, it gives her all kinds of vibes. And then another one was persistence. So these guys, they're not going to leave. After all the land developers after them, they're staying. They're not being pushed around. And another one we have is family. So like we said, with the weird adoptive babysitter, I feel like they're kind of just like a hodgepodge. They find their family bonds, I guess you could say. Like we said, we know she's the babysitter, but it's also kind of giving, Tessa, what did you call this?
I said it was giving incestuous nonetheless. So a little weird. Which I feel like there was that also, wasn't it in Wild in the Country?
Yes.
It was like, I don't know. So
it was,
it was 1960s.
I think that was technically was supposed to be his cousin, right?
Yeah, something.
Yeah. Again, you don't ask questions once you get to a certain amount of movies.
I don't even know.
Yeah.
So they're pretty resourceful. They adapt to their environment, and it's kind of like a lighthearted take on the American dream. An interesting one.
A take.
I don't know how I feel about the plot. I love the song "Follow That Dream."
It's a good song.
There's some good songs. He's got the whole denim Canadian tuxedo, and his character is. I literally wrote one line, and I said he's kind of dumb, and that's it. I don't feel like there's much sustenance.
Yeah, and I feel like when we get to the reactions that they were having of the day, it will make more sense. Why we just said, he's giving kind of dumb main character energy.
Right. So some behind the scenes info. Elvis has his natural hair color in this movie, which is interesting. So we were talking about the only movies that he has his natural hair color are Love Me Tender. Obviously we can't tell because it's black and white. Follow That Dream, and then also Kid Galahad, right? Yeah. And it was filmed in Crystal River, Florida.
Yep. And then we go through a lot of Elvis books to get some of our behind the scenes information. This is coming from Peter Gronick's book, Careless Love. And in this book, he says, Follow the Dream was a production for which Elvis was to get $600,000 plus 50% of the profits. Elvis's 19-year-old cousin Billy Smith accompanied the group for the first time, and the Colonel arranged for a special event to honor Elvis's achievements in show business on the last Sunday of the month. Here we go again, Weeki Wachee?
Yeah, I think.
Whoa. Weeki Wachee Spring, and there were supposed to be over 3,000 solid citizens showed up, including the hastily convened Elvis Presley Underwater Fan Club. Very interesting. Which put on a show in a large tank while Elvis and the guys, attired identically in cool, dark continental suits, apprehensively looked on. That's a very weird description.
Well, because the girls were like half dressed. So.
Oh, I was not picturing that.
Yeah, because it's like that underwater mermaid thing.
Oh.
You know those pictures from WikiWatchy? Yeah. So this was
wait. There's pictures from this?
I'll post some.
Please do.
So, and he looks rather happy to be there.
I'm assuming they all did.
Yeah. And then Peter Gronick also talks about some behind the scenes stuff. He says that Elvis brought his new 20-foot Coronado powerboat with them to Florida. And Elvis, quote, Elvis enjoyed having his new boat on the river, went water skiing frequently, and gave a good comic performance as idiot savant and instinctive moral arbiter, Toby Quimper. I thought this was really interesting because it's like that idiot savant idea, and it kind of follows him in the next few movies. And what was cool about reading about this era of movies is that the Memphis Mafia sort of became integral to Elvis's movie making experience at this time.
Yep. And Gronick's book, he continues to say the director Gordon Douglas invited Elvis to dinner one night, throwing him into a fit of contempt until the colonel suggested that he bring all the guys with him, explaining to Douglas afterward that Elvis was not comfortable except within his own circle. So they kind of, for Elvis, I guess they had to be there. Definitely, I feel like after a while, made filming more enjoyable, not just comfortable.
And then in Alana Nash's book, several members of the book Elvis and the Memphis Mafia, several members of the Memphis Mafia talk about the movie making experience. And so Lamar Fike says, we took that 1960 Cadillac limousine, the white one that's in the Country Music Hall of Fame. There was a scene where I was supposed to drive the limo on the beach. The camera truck was out in front of me, and I was supposed to pull out and circle back and come back in. I pulled off and got stuck in the sand, and the damn limo sank all the way up to the axles. The director, Gordon Douglas, and everybody on that camera truck jumped off and started cussing at me. In a flash, Elvis came off that truck. He turned to Douglas and he said, if you open your mouth again, I'll tear your head off. Then he turned to the crew and he said, any of you MFs think you can pop off at one of my people, you're mistaken. If this happens again, I'm walking off the set. And everybody got real nice.
Ooh, way to save the day.
A little intense. And yeah, I think now this is kind of where it takes a little bit of a, gets a bit deeper, I suppose. One of the reasons that maybe Elvis was acting this way, Lamar talks about some of the prescription drug usage behind the scenes. And he kind of said it started around Follow That Dream.
Yeah, he's saying Follow That Dream was in 1961. We started doing really crazy things around that time. One reason is because we were all getting more and more into pills. Not all of us, but Elvis was, and I was, and to a degree, Sonny and Alan Fortis.
Yeah.
So, and yeah, like you said, it wasn't just Elvis. It was kind of stretching out to the guys. So I could imagine the shenanigans increased, which probably did not make a very productive movie set.
Right. And then Lamar continues. He had a lot to say about this movie.
Lamar has a lot to say about everything, I feel like.
In general, yeah.
In general.
He said, Elvis had a tremendous temper, but the pills made it worse. On Follow That Dream, he fired us all one by one. I think I was first, and then Alan, and on down the line. When you got fired, you had nowhere to go. And when you realized, I'm going to have to get a regular job, it put the fear of God in you. But he rarely meant it. Guys were already starting to leave when he said, we need to talk this over. And he got everybody back together.
Interesting times.
Yeah.
And then we have this other bit of information from Ray Sitton, a friend. So he was an extra on Follow That Dream. He is the chief from the story. This is from Marty. Marty says, Sitton used to come to the gate at Graceland before Elvis hired him. Elvis sometimes stopped to talk with the fans when he was going in and out of the gates, and he got used to seeing Ray. He'd say, hi, Chief, how's it going today? And that's his nickname, by the way. He wasn't like there wasn't a character name. Well, Elvis used that name pretty loosely, but Ray didn't know that. One evening, the guys were in the den and somebody came in and said, Chief asked if he could come up to the house. Elvis said, Chief, who the hell is that? And the guy said, I don't know. He said, you knew him. Elvis said, goes, man, I call everybody Chief. He thought it was funny and said, okay, bring him up. I think Elvis felt sorry for him. That's how he got on the team.
Yeah, so the Memphis Mafia was like expanding at the time. I've heard this story before, and so Ray
Yes.
Sitton, he thought his nickname was Chief, but it was just like Elvis calling
Yeah.
people that, and so
Like he thought he was in on the inner circle, but
right. And then that's kind of how he got involved, and he was sort of a member
yeah.
of the Memphis Mafia group of Elvis's friends at that time. And the number of people that were in this group were getting bigger. So Chief Ray Sitton eventually got fired because he had a couple of drunk driving incidents driving Elvis's cars. And then Lamar is a total hater of Chief. He says,
Yep.
quote, Chief was the proverbial square peg, and if we didn't want someone to fit, they never fit. Elvis hired Chief because he made me mad on Follow That Dream. He's dead now, and I'm sorry, but I hated that son of a bitch. Like, that's so mean.
Oh my gosh.
And I think it was Marty in the book, in Alan Nash's book as well. And he was like, oh, Lamar didn't like him because the Chief was like a bigger guy as well, bigger than Lamar, and also funny. And so he was worried that he was going to take his place. Yeah.
Well, that kind of covers up a little bit of the behind the scenes stuff. And so now moving on to like the reception of the film. So this is all like not current reception, modern. This is all taking place in 1962. The first one we have is from Variety. This is published March 28th, 1962. One of their comments was, Presley's buff figure to take very kindly to the David Weisbart production. Read the review, which displays their hero in good form in the kind of vehicle in which the record shows him to be saleable. The light romantic comedy with songs, which I think kind of describes everything. It goes on to say Presley conveys the right blend of horse sense and naivete in his characterization. And then last, there are legs and lapses in the picture, to be sure, but by Presley Pick's standards, it's above average. Which I think was shocking for this film, not gonna lie.
Yeah, because I would say it's below average.
Yeah. Like it's not up to the standards of like the 50s. I don't think it's up to the standards of maybe like a Viva Las Vegas down the road.
Right. Like it was, I'm happy I watched it. I'd watch it again. I think it looked good in this one. And he's like a sweet character. But it's not like all that a bag of chips. Just right. So then the New York Times in August of 1962 said, fan us with a palm frond and a ragged one at that. Elvis Presley, who was seen in Blue Hawaii, now appears on the Florida coast as a combination of Sir Galahad and Little Abner in Follow That Dream. Judging by this laboriously homespun and simple-minded exercise about just plain folks, somebody must have decided that the Presley films have been getting a little too glossy lately. In any case, compared to yesterday's serving of cornmeal mush, Blue Hawaii was caviar. I would agree. Blue Hawaii, I would say, is the superior beach film, but Toby's kind of and this movie. So
that wraps up Follow That Dream. So then we're going to move on to Kid Galahad, which was released August 1st, 1962. It was directed by Phil Carlson. The production and distribution company for this film was the Mercich Company, Inc. and United Artists. It was based
same people who did Follow That Dream. Same group.
It was based on the novel Kid Galahad by Francis Wallace, which was published in 1936. It was a remake of the 1937 movie that starred Edward Robertson and Betty Davis. Yeah, I know. My notes are a little bit off. That's stupid autocorrect. Betty Davis and Humphrey Bogart. I love Humphrey Bogart. I'm just throwing that in there.
And he was one of Elvis's like heroes as well in terms of acting. So it's kind of interesting.
But the cast for Elvis's Kid Galahad was, of course, Elvis, Gig Young, Lola Albright, Joan Blackman. She was in Blue Hawaii, and then Charles Bronson.
And our little log line is a ruthless fight promoter tries to turn a singing mechanic into a champion. No prizes for guessing who the singing mechanic is.
Of course.
Right.
That's
So Elvis plays Walter Gillick. Gillick. And he's a kind-hearted but aimless young man who was recently discharged from the army. I said, okay, art imitating life yet again. And then I also said, TBH, I get this one in Wild in the Country confused because the vibe to me is similar, like the setting.
Like, okay.
I think I also watched them like back to back. So the vibe.
Fever
Like,
state.
no, this was more recently. This was in the
Whoa.
past 6-7 months.
Okay.
And I think that maybe that's what it is. But something about the setting, I feel like aren't they both supposed to be like upstate New York or something? I don't know.
Yes.
So in my head,
I believe
they're in
so.
the same place. And he's kind of giving the same vibe. And then Walter wants to be a mechanic, but he ends up being really good at boxing. And the local boxing trainer, Willie Grogan, takes him as a protege.
Yeah. And so at first, Elvis's character is a little bit resistant with his boxing skills, but when then he realizes he's pretty good. He did say that he boxed in the army a little bit. He goes through the ranks very quickly, moving up from kind of like, I guess, like the boxing dummy to like the boxer. Woo!
Yeah.
And then, Casanova Elvis strikes again. Of course. Walter falls in love with Willie's sister Rose, which is played by Joan Blackman. She was the love interest in Blue Hawaii as well. We just talked about that. This is obvious because tensions between the boys, it's going to cause a little bit of drama.
Yeah, and then there's also like mobsters and debts owed and
Boxer, not mobsters. Like,
I don't know, but there were mobsters also in Follow That Dream, or yeah, with the casino. I don't know. I don't really.
They had to add tension somehow.
Yeah. And then I said, don't worry, Walter slays. He shows he's a man of action and has strength of character. So he wins in the end.
Ooh.
Hooray.
Yeah. Hooray.
We classic themes, classic Elvis movie themes.
Pretty much, yeah. So we got perseverance, which he wants that job, and I feel like that's where that comes from. Redemption, classic. We got integrity and honesty, and then power of community. So
sounds like other Elvis movies.
It sounds a lot like other Elvis movies.
So
basic character plots.
Yeah, I mean it's the same, and there's a couple songs. So aren't there? Are there songs?
There's an extended play for Kid Galahad. So yes, there's a couple songs. It was very few, so not enough to go on a full record, but enough for an extended play.
Okay.
You're welcome.
So Elvis's character in the movie is a classic. He's honorable. He avoids using underhand tactics and is motivated by the desire to do things the right way, unlike the people around him. He's also hardworking. He's committed to making a living, and he's gentle and caring. So he's kind-hearted, particularly in his relationships with those he cares about, like his love interest and his mentor, and he's a likable, compassionate figure. So, but he sounds like Toby.
And every other Elvis character. I mean, I hate to say it, but once we got to the 60s,
it's like,
yeah. Anywho, we'll get to some now behind the scenes stuff. So, like we said, there was only 3 movies that Elvis had his natural hair color. This was the third and final one. And we also got some more information from Peter Goronick's book when he writes about Elvis's displeasure during the filming of this movie. So he says Kid Galahad turned out to be a very different experience from the one he had in Follow That Dream. Once again, he was playing a kind of idiot savant, an instinctively gallant boxer this time, but without the comedic touch or script of the previous film. So the script of Follow That Dream was a little bit superior to this one. Elvis wasn't happy with his appearance. His weight had ballooned to nearly 200 pounds, and he was unmotivated about the film, and he felt generally put upon.
Yeah, and he also was not really getting along with his co-worker, Charles Bronson, who, this is from Gronic's book, and made it very clear that he was unimpressed by Elvis's karate exhibitions, which, given that it's like a fighting movie, I feel like he would have been really like upset about that.
Oh, absolutely.
And
Especially
so
this
a
was
little
like
bit
the
more,
prime karate phase, I feel like.
right. And so a little bit more, like Lamar talked about some behind the scenes prescription usage during Follow That Dream. Marty talks about it. Marty Lacker talks about it during the filming of Kid Galahad, which is the first movie that Marty Lacker traveled out to California to film or to work with Elvis. So Marty says in the Elvis and the Memphis Mafia book, he says, quote, "We were doing Kid Galahad when I first noticed what Elvis called his makeup case. It was a professional Hollywood makeup case with little drawers in it. He carried it with him wherever he went or had one of us carry it. It wasn't for makeup anymore. He used it to carry pills. He had a pharmacy in that box."
Yeah. Well, then
kind of, it's like tracking. This is where we get like the turn. It's like tracking the behind the scenes stuff. Is in the earlier movies, you see Elvis was much like more motivated and he was just kind of like jovial and joking around behind the scenes to cool off. And now we're kind of getting more information about like prescription usage and just like you can see how it kind of trends upwards during the movies he wasn't super pleased with making. And these are the first few where we see that.
Absolutely. And then also at this time, Elvis was living at, we just threw this in because it's, I don't know, we find it interesting. He was living at 1053-9 Bellagio Road. And of course, more information from Lamar. He said Elvis was tired of the Perugia Way house and he needed more room. So he upgraded to the Bellagio home.
Yeah, and that was also partly due to that the Memphis Mafia, like the number of people that were sort of in the circle and coming with him was increasing. Like we had people like Chief, like some randoms, kind of coming along. You know, like there were a lot of tagging on people who came from 2 movies and then kind of left. And so he needed a bigger house for like more people who were around him. So that number increased too, like the amount of displeasure he had with making these movies.
True.
There's
the worst movie was more people.
Right. There's also an incident. This is long, but it's pretty funny. So Marty recalled Elvis stealing Sonny's girl. So this was during like the filming of Kid Galahad. So in Marty's book, Portrait of a Friend, he says, quote, "Sonny was on location with us working on the film as a stuntman. He was not working for Elvis at the time. Elvis saw Sonny's girl, liked her looks, and began turning on the charm. The following weekend, we went to Palm Springs, and when Elvis asked Sonny's girl to go with him, she quickly accepted. Needless to say, when Sonny learned of the weekend tryst, he was furious and refused to talk to Elvis for days. In the dressing room one morning, Elvis asked, 'What's Sonny so damn bugged about? How come he doesn't come around to talk to me?' Either Elvis didn't remember the weekend with Sonny's girl, or he was putting on a good act. He looked at those of us in the room, but we were reluctant to tell him what was wrong. Receiving no answer, he turned to me and said, 'Go talk to Sonny and see what he's pissed about.'" So I think it's also interesting how like the more people were around and his personality, we kind of see a little bit of a shift in how he's acting towards the people that are around him.
Absolutely.
So,
anywho, also another addition to the group was Scatter the Chimp. I feel like most people at this point know who Scatter is. Also in Chronicles, Careless Love, he said about the big excitement was a chimpanzee named Scatter. Scatter introduced an unpredictable element into their lives. I love a good Scatter story, I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting that when these movies are kind of like, he is busy all day, every day making these movies that he's not really feeling, that it sort of increases the amount of craziness that goes on behind the scenes.
Just as a way, I feel like, to push aside the filming.
Right.
Because I feel like that was usually one of
more people.
The biggest complaints. Yeah.
More people, there's a chimp, there's like more
distractions,
more prescription drug usage. Like there's more just going on because he's not like fulfilled really by these movies anymore, like he was at the beginning.
Absolutely. But now we're going to talk a little bit about the reception of the film again. So the New York Times, March 7th, 1963, they put out their review saying that Mr. Presley is certainly no model for a statue of Hercules, and his skills at projecting an illusion of ferocity is a very low degree. The expanses of flesh that he exposes when he gets into the boxing togs are a fair indication that most of his muscles have come from the punching of a guitar and his pout when he clouts a rival bears. Clouts a rival bears no resemblance to a killer slit-mouthed sneer. No, we'll have to agree that Mr. Presley does not make a very convincing pug, but somehow the clique-ridden picture makes a moderately genial entertainment.
I just think it's so interesting
Whoa.
that like they were always talking about his appearance, his weight, specifically his weight. And like in this movie and in Follow That Dream, you can see that he's like maybe a little bit bigger than he was in like 1960 when he just came back from the army, which is
Yeah.
understandable if you're training and, you know, doing all that. But I feel badly for him that he was so like put into that position for basically his whole career where they just critiqued his appearance and his weight and
100%.
and
Yeah.
it didn't help to do movies that were like he's completely shirtless in the scene and you know I don't know.
And I would imagine somebody in the inner circle or maybe even Elvis read it. And I feel like that's where a lot of the self-awareness, self-critique came from. That was probably not helpful further down the road when he was doing more movies of this nature.
And this New York Times article also says, for a film about a singing prize fighter, which is silly enough, it'll do. And then Variety also says, Presley's acting resources are limited, but he has gradually established a character with which he does not have to strain too much for emotional nuance. The soft-spoken, unaffected, polite, unspoiled, forthright, and ultimately two-fisted country boy. So that was kind of more positive.
Yeah.
But it's like not exactly a glowing review.
Like you were saying earlier, though, this is a remake of Humphrey Bogart's film. And Humphrey Bogart being, you know, kind of like an idol for Elvis. I just had to like wonder like what Elvis thought of these reviews after reading them. Just, I don't know, were you thinking like, oh, I did not live up to my idol, kind of the disappointment? I don't know, it just seems a little sad and a bit of a letdown.
Right. Like it was supposed to be a more like serious movie, serious role, but it just kind of fell a little bit flat. And that's all reflected in like all the stuff going on behind the scenes.
Oh, 100%.
Okay. Yeah. So the next
going to take turns with you
is Girls, 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 which came out November 21st, 1962. It's directed by our guy, Norman Taurog, produced and distributed by Hal Wallace Productions. Another name for it was Gumbo Yaya, apparently. The cast includes Elvis Presley, Stella Stevens, Laurel Goodwin, Jeremy Slate, and Robert Strauss. And our little log line, which is funny, and I enjoy it. This movie is like a lighthearted guilty pleasure movie, I would say.
I would say so, yeah.
So the log line is a Hawaiian fisherman, the story between a sexy nightclub singer and a nice girl with a secret. Tag yourself.
Yep. Do you want to talk about your guilty pleasure song now or
yeah, I can. So I know, like you guys know, I love Elvis's music. I love his voice, and I feel very strongly you can hear when he loves a song and loves to sing it, and you can tell when he is not about it. Now, this is one I can kind of tell he's not about it, but he's trying, and it's from this movie, and it's really terrible. But it's my guilty pleasure Elvis song, and it's Song of the Shrimp. It's so bad, like, but it's kind of catchy. And anyway, I'll put it on the playlist for this week because it's funny. So I hope you enjoy it.
My more reasonable guilty pleasure song was Girls, 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 the title track.
Yeah.
But I think that's a reasonable one. And Tessa's is Song of the Shrimp.
I get such a little visual. I think of the little shrimp from Shark Tale, where it's like, my sister had a baby. You know, and that's my visual in my head about this.
Okay. Great. Now I have that visual every time I listen to the song now. Thank you for that.
You're
okay. Anyway, we'll get into the plot now. So Elvis's character is Ross Carpenter. He's introduced as a carefree boat operator at a Hawaiian resort. It's another Hawaiian movie. He loves his job and the freedom it provides, but his life is complicated by the attention of all the ladies who visit the resort.
Can't help it.
Yep. So in the movie though, Ross meets Robin. She is an older, wealthy woman who expresses deep interest in him. She's really flirty. She's really persistent about it.
And then this guy, Chad Woodward, who's played by Burgess Meredith, is a wealthy and eccentric man who offers to buy Ross's boat, the SS Lovebird, but Ross is reluctant to part with it. Chad promises him a large sum of money, but Ross has sentimental value attached to the boat, which makes the decision pretty tough. Then Ross meets Susan, played by Laurel Goodwin, who is sweet and innocent, and she works at the resort. She develops a crush on Ross. I mean, duh. And we have more romantic complications.
Yes, and so Ross finds himself caught between Robin and Susan. Ross spends some time with Robin, taking her on a boat ride. Their relationship grows more flirtatious, but Ross is still not ready for a commitment. Big thing throughout the movie is fear of commitment, I gotta say. Meanwhile, Susan, she's a little bit jealous, which adds tension between the two characters. Chad is still there. He keeps pressuring Ross to sell the boat.
And then the tension between Robin, Susan, and Ross increases as all the women vie for his attention. Ross finally makes a decision. He decides not to sell the boat, and instead he does commit to a relationship with Susan. He realizes he's been running from love, but he's ready to embrace it. And in our final scene, Ross and Susan live happily ever after, and Ross finds contentment in both his love life and work. And Robin, although she's disappointed, she moves on. She gets over it.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So
typical Elvis romance movie.
It's beach, it's boats, it's he's wearing that little hat. Shrimp. What's not to like? Great.
And then, okay, now we got some themes for you. So first one we have is romantic relationships and commitment, obviously talking about the two women chasing him. And eventually at the end, he learns to make a commitment to one woman for an extended period of time, not just like one woman every, week or so.
I think it's interesting that this is when like his relationship with Priscilla, like it's kind of starting to get more serious. Like she's about to come to the US and like live there and finish high school and everything. And so it's kind of interesting that he's doing this movie where it's like, oh, he can't commit to one woman. I just think that's pretty interesting.
They were trying to tell him something, I guess. Maybe. And then the next one we have is personal growth and self-discovery. So being a mature man, he learns more about himself, his priorities, and becomes more mature when it comes to his relationships.
He's got freedom and responsibility. He's torn between being carefree, and he becomes a man with responsibilities, in which his responsibilities are A, his boat, and B, like a stable relationship. And it's about the complexity of love. Ross learns that love is more than just flirting or finding a new woman every week. I don't know if Elvis really ever learned that, but Ross Carpenter does. So
he does.
And I feel like we have to talk about. Okay, so there's a scene where he's dancing. I know Megan is like not. Okay, so there's a scene where he's dancing. You guys.
I forgot about this.
I forgot too until I was just thinking about it. He's dancing. The walls have ears or whatever. And visibly, Elvis gets a little, shall we say, excited.
Okay, that's podcast appropriate.
Yeah, so I mean, you'll see it. It's very obvious if you Google it. It's one of the first things. He's wearing all black. And
I can't believe they left that in the movie.
The first time I saw it, I didn't notice. And then once I read that was what happened, I did notice. So it's very obvious. So just when you're rewatching, just you'll see it. And I forgot to put that in the behind the scenes thing because I kind of forgot. And someone talks about it
till now.
Talks about Elvis being like, dude, like, what do we do? I got like whatever. So it's kind of funny.
Again, they kept it in the movie.
They could have cropped the shot, but they totally
could have cropped it. They could have just been like, no, we need to do another take of that.
And those pants are tight. Like
they're tight.
It's very obvious. Anyway.
Okay. Anyway, thank you for that. go watch the movie, I guess. Anywho,
I
we'll
will
talk
not be
about
posting that on the podcast.
you can.
So,
There's Google. It's there. It's
Google.
available. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. Well, talking a little bit about Elvis's character. So obviously, we said he plays the character of Ross Carpenter. He's the protagonist in the movie, fun-loving boat operator, of course. His character avoids serious relationships at all costs. Talked about that. I know, shocker, right? He lives a carefree life, but enjoys the attention of the ladies who visit the resort.
The girls, if you will.
Girls. That's the whole point of the movie. His character is able to establish a balance in life between his boating career and his woman. And then in the end, Ross is obviously a charmer. I mean, duh, he's played by Elvis Presley.
Yep.
What sounds like. We got a little bit about the behind the scenes. So Tessa, give us that.
Yeah. So Peter Guralnick says in Careless Love, quote, for girls, Hal Wallace took the company to Hawaii once again for beautiful vistas, beautiful sunsets, and needless to say, beautiful girls. It was a highly forgettable production, a decided step back artistically, which I would agree. I think it's more of the formulaic than Follow That Dream and Kid Galahad, but it's fine, I guess.
Fine.
So what was the reception?
Well, I was going to say this one, I do prefer this one over like Follow That Dream and Kid Galahad. Don't come at me. That's the wrong answer.
I was just looking up the poster because I know it said something funny, and it says the swingingest Elvis plus girls, in parentheses, girls, plus songs, lots of them. Who could ask for anything more?
Yeah. And this one did have a full-length album for all the songs. So there was much more than the other movies. But the reception of the film, so we have an article from Variety, November 7th, 1963. First thing they said is Girls is just that, with Elvis Presley there as the main attraction, apparently from the grosses racked up by the performer's earlier picks. He remains certainly a stable attraction. This new effort hinges on the popularity of the entertainer. They also go on to say, on our next quote, Hal Wallace Productions, directed by Norman Taurog. Are we saying that right still? Puts the entertainer back into the non-dramatic, purely escapist, light musical vein. The thin plot has him the romantic interest of two girls. Hackneyed Tale is a poor boy fisherman who meets a rich girl who doesn't tell him she is rich, but who naturally falls in love with him. Presley, on the other hand, is far more interested in recovering a sleek sailboat originally built by his father, but then forced into other hands, as the usual elements including a dastardly villain who turns out to be a wolf, but not in disguise, are present.
Yep. And this Variety article also says, essentially, Presley plays himself in the breezy sea session. He handles the role capably, though one would hardly expect a hardened fisherman to be as soft, smooth, and white as the one Presley depicts. The character has little depth, but he is pleasant.
Yep.
I would agree. It's it's an okay movie.
It's one of the formula movies.
I mean, it's Return to
Sender. Yeah, we did.
I always forget that that's from that movie, so I feel like
I do too.
That's good. Maybe.
Yep, maybe. I don't know.
I'll add it on the playlist.
Please do. All right, you want to take over the last one?
So our last one we're covering today is It Happened at the World's Fair, which came out April 3rd, 1963. And this was the first Elvis movie I watched after my Elvis break movies. Yeah, so Diane and I watched this one over FaceTime together, which was really fun. And I was like, okay, fine, I'll watch some more of these movies because I hadn't watched any since August 2022.
Wow, okay.
Except I've rewatched King Creole a couple times.
Well, that's a classic. You gotta watch that one.
Yeah, and so anyway, got me back into watching some of the movies. So It Happened at the World's Fair. It was directed by classic Norman Taurog. It was distributed by Ted Richmond Productions and Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer Incorporated. It's also known as Take Me to the Fair. Our cast includes Elvis Presley, Joan O'Brien, Danny Lockwood, Vicky Tu, and H.M. Wynant. And our little log line here is a pilot's efforts to help a lost girl at the Seattle World's Fair and lead to love.
Whoa.
Wow.
All right. And so plot rundown. Elvis plays Mike Edwards, Mike Edwards is a pilot. He is flying a crop dusting plane.
Can we?
We can, yes.
So Mike Edwards, if you've read Lisa Marie's book,
you know Mike Edwards has his own book too.
Yeah. So anyway, you should look him up, but this is just
problematic.
The name.
Yeah.
Totally problematic. This is interesting that it's the name of the character he played. That's all.
I did find it interesting. Okay. So Mike, he's a pilot. He is flying a crop dusting plane over Seattle. He is heading to the city for a job and a chance to make some money. Mike lands in Seattle and learns about the excitement surrounding the World's Fair. Obviously, hint, hint, the title, it happened at the World's Fair.
Right. And so when Ross gets to Seattle...
Sorry, not Ross, it's Mike.
Oh, it does say, yeah. Look, they all blur into one.
They all blur into one.
When Mike flies in, he meets Sue Lin, who is a Chinese-American orphan girl who's been separated from her uncle and is left in the care of a woman who runs a local diner. Sue Lin is looking for her uncle, but it's a difficult situation. So this one, we see Elvis like interacting with kids. In this movie, I feel like this is the first one that we kind of see that.
It's a little bit different than what we're used to. And I feel like that's the main focus of the film, not more of like a romantic film.
Yeah, it's more of like he interacts with this kid. So then Mike feels sympathy for Sue Lin and offers to help her find her uncle, even though he's got his own shit to worry about. Sorry.
Yeah.
They bond and Ross begins to take...
Mike, sorry.
Mike.
Really blending.
Oh my gosh. And Mike begins to take responsibility for her well-being, even though he's initially reluctant. And Mike and Sue Lin visit the World's Fair together. Hooray. And while he's there...
he meets this lady, Diane. And Diane is played by Joan O'Brien. She is a nurse at the World's Fair. I don't know if anybody's seen the movie, but man, can Elvis turn on the Riz. I'm just saying.
He's the Rizzler.
Yeah. So I think the first was he got something in his eye or something.
Yeah.
It was something. He was looking for an excuse always to go back to see her. But he was putting the same moves on her as he did in like the beginning of the film. Go watch it. What is the song he sings? Sorry, this is such a side note. What is the song he sings?
I don't remember right now, but it's a little raunchy.
It's Relax.
Relax. That one's raunchy. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I started watching the movie and I was like, oh. So then we have a little subplot develops with the Danny character, who is another pilot who's competing with Mike for a job at the fair. Danny acts as a comedic rival, which adds some kind of tension and conflict to Mike's life, especially as he juggles his responsibilities with the kid, Sue Lin. So then Mike and Sue Lin search for her uncle intensifies, and they run into more challenges as they navigate crowds at the World's Fair. Guess what? Mike's feelings for Diane become undeniable, and it's clear he's grown attached to her. Despite his initial reluctance, he admits to his feelings, and they share a tender moment. And then our final act sees Sue Lin finding her uncle at the fair. Hooray! It's all good.
Hooray! But yeah, I feel like the majority of the film was focused on Elvis' interaction with Sue Lin, Mike's interaction with Sue Lin characters.
Yeah.
Versus, like I said, like a typical romance movie done by Elvis. But we do have some themes. So our first one is adventures and escapism. So we're talking about the World's Fair provides a backdrop for the characters' fun and adventure, offering also an escape from their daily lives. Whole purpose of the fair back in the day. Got to throw a little bit of romance in there. So romantic love. The romantic relationship between Mike and Diane grows as they work together, with themes of care and emotional attraction emerging throughout the story. But just, I feel like, a very little.
Yeah, and so the main kind of theme is caring and responsibility. So Mike is, he has some self-growth because at the beginning he's just kind of a womanizer, and then he's like, oh, I'm going to take care of this kid. And he becomes kind of a caretaker for Sue Lin. And then we have the theme of selflessness and friendship. So, Mike helps Sue Lin despite his troubles, and he sings to her. It's quite cute. It's kind of, when you think about it, a little odd that just this like random man is like taking care of this child he doesn't know. And a good thing he's not a freak, because like that could have gone very wrong. But, you know, I guess it's lighthearted. I don't know. In reality, maybe not.
Right. And then we got just a quick little breakdown of Elvis's character. So obviously, like we said, he plays Mike Edwards. Mike Edwards is a pilot, loves the ladies. Of course, when you are played by Elvis Presley, you have to. His character becomes responsible and caring, and that is through through his character being compelled to watch after Sue Lin. His character is helpful. Again, helps Sue Lin find her uncle after she wanders away. And of course, I put he's very Rizzy.
Absolutely.
Again, more questions. Did you see that first scene? And then what about the scene where he meets Diane? I'm just saying.
He's Riz
Easy.
Wazoo.
I feel like this one is like peak Riz.
Yeah,
I'm just saying.
Yeah. And I like that little suit he wears.
Which, the first one?
The silvery kind of gray one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So some behind the scenes. So like we said, around this time, the Memphis Mafia group is like getting bigger and more involved and more integral to Elvis's movie making experience. So we have two people joining. So Richard Davis and Jimmy Kingsley joined the group. And Marty recalls playing touch football at Graceland with them. And then he says, quote, in August of 1962, Elvis went out to California to do It Happened at the World's Fair. Jimmy and Richard hopped in the car and followed him out there, just showed up in LA, and they said they were on vacation. Elvis was getting ready to go to Seattle to do the location shooting, and after he talked to them a little while, he and Joe Esposito disappeared in the bathroom. In a minute, Joe stuck his head out and asked Richard and Jimmy to come in. Elvis said, I'm going to Seattle to do a movie. How would you like to come work for me? So it's kind of interesting that he's just like kind of taking all these stragglers on. Like, I like this movie. It's cute.
I do too.
It's not like right home about. It's fine.
It can be a comfort movie.
Yeah, it's like calm. It's like a calm movie. But you can see he needed like a little more people around him to like.
Yeah, and like as Tessa was saying, this is the time when the Memphis Mafia began to like fluctuate in size, but at this point it's kind of starting to take shape into what was then deemed the Memphis Mafia. And so we get from Marty, he said just before it happened at the World's Fair. Just before it happened at the World's Fair, sorry. Elvis had everybody get black jumpsuits. He got a white jumpsuit for himself, and then they all got in a Dodge motorhome, which was also black and white, and took off across the country. So they all had uniforms at this point. It's pretty easy to say.
It's giving mafia.
It's giving mafia. I need to see the black jumpsuits though.
I know. And then Joe Esposito was also an extra. So in his book, in Good Rocking Tonight, he says, quote, the Memphis Mafia began playing bit parts in Elvis's movies, which helped break the tedium a bit. The guys were always on the set anyway, and Elvis didn't mind us making extra money. So Joe says he played a soldier in Kissing Cousins and a carnival worker, and It Happened at the World's Fair. And a little tidbit, here's the behind the scenes tidbit info, which is fun. And I'm sure a lot of people know this, but.
Oh, you want me to? I get to?
Yeah, I was giving you a lead up.
All right. So we talked about the character Diane. Elvis's character gets to meet Diane because, again, because he paid this little boy to step on his foot, like stomp on his foot. And that little boy was played by Kurt Russell. And so I don't know if anybody has seen the 1979 film Elvis, but Kurt Russell plays Elvis in that film.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. It's the little kid who whacked in one.
Whacked in one. Yeah. Thank you for that terminology.
You're welcome.
All right. And now talking about the reception of the film. You want to start?
Yeah. So Variety said, those for whom hippiness is just a thing called Elvis figure to welcome this metro morsel with almost the same box office ardor with which they have greeted the more recent of Presley's musicalized films. However, this is apt to be a tedious going for all but the most confirmed of Presley's young admirers.
Yep. And Variety goes on to say the 10, count 'em 10 tunes he sings made because for rejoicing among the more ardent followers, but stacked up proportionately against the skinny story in between, it seems at least 3 too many. Omitting the slim scenarios by, is it Psy?
I don't know.
I'm going with Psy. Cy Rose, and Seaman Jacobs. So many warbling interruptions upset the tempo of the yarn and prevalent plot and picture from gathering momentum. None of the 10 songs are very memorable, but they're a good bet to sell a lot of wax for Presley and RCA Victor. Like I said, that one did have a full-length album.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think of songs that are in it. Like I know we have like the Sandman or whatever.
I'm thinking chronologically. There was Relax, Sandman, Take Me to the Fair.
Yeah, I'm Falling in Love Tonight.
I'm Falling in Love Tonight.
Cotton Candy Land.
Cotton Candy Land. We're up to 5. Halfway there.
Oh, that's the Sandman song. Is Cotton Candy Land.
We're at 4 still.
One Broken Heart for Sale.
One Broken Heart for Sale.
I'm Falling in Love Tonight. Beyond the Bend.
Oh, yeah.
A World of Our Own. How Would You Like to Be? And Happy Ending. It's not my preferred.
It's not your preferred. All right, fair enough.
I mean, it's not. It's not. It doesn't have like a return to sender. You know, like
No.
At least Girls had Return to Sender and
Or Shrimp Song.
I Don't Want to Be Tied, Shrimp Song. I Don't Want to Be Tied. You know, some good ones. I don't know. What was your favorite movie out of these 4?
Probably Girls.
Yeah, I think it's like it's an Elvis movie, you know?
It's a typical Elvis movie.
Classic Elvis movie.
And it does have
good and bad.
The more memorable songs.
Yeah.
That we talked about.
Yeah. So
yeah. What was your favorite?
I would say probably Girls as well. And I like It Happened at the World's Fair.
I was gonna say I do like that one too.
Yeah. The other two
We're just Elvis girls. We like a good like comfort Elvis movie.
Yeah, I don't think that any of them are like good movies.
Like they're not gonna win an Oscar.
Yeah, I don't think they're like films, you know? It's like okay. It's like a chick flick.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah, it's more of a chick flick, comfort film, comfort movie, not a film.
Oh gosh, what are the next 4?
The next 4, again, once we get to, I feel like the 60s, they all just seem to run together. So we just finished all of 62, 63. So we are looking at Fun in Acapulco next, Kissing Cousins, Viva Las Vegas, and Roustabout.
Okay. I'd only seen Viva Las Vegas, so I will be watching. Yeah, I will be watching the others before our next episode.
Yep.
And I'll probably have thoughts.
I will say Roustabout, I always thought was supposed to be the Colonel's Day just because it takes place around the carnival, and Barbara Stanwyck is in that film.
Oh, cool. Okay.
So,
yeah.
Yep.
Anyway, that's it.
But Acapulco has a little bit of drama. Behind the scenes drama.
Oh, yeah.
So we'll get all into that on our next episode.
All right. That's it for today.
That's all we have for today. Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Chronicles of the King podcast.
If you love what you heard, please don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Your feedback helps bring the King's story to life.
You can follow us on social media at the Chronicles of the King for updates, upcoming series, and more. We'd love to hear your input and any of your favorite Elvis moments.
Until next time, keep rocking and rolling, and we'll be back soon with more stories from Elvis's extraordinary life.
With TLC, we'll see you on the next episode of the Chronicles of the King.